So we've updated you on the NFL situation. The NBA looks like it's full speed ahead by the end of July. Hockey's coming back. Golf's coming back. Everybody's coming back except for Major League Baseball. And, of course, that means we have Tom Verducci on. Tom, when is baseball coming back?
I'd love to just tell you July, Dan. I've been thinking that all along and purely out of optimism because right now the rhetoric is terrible. Both sides are really dug in. If you're just taking the temperature of negotiations, you would say there's no agreement here. But I still believe, Dan, that the downside to not playing baseball, especially as you mentioned, all these other sports are up and running, is so enormous. That's the biggest motivator to get a deal done. So I'm still optimistic. It doesn't look like the 4th of July the way owners originally wanted, but I think somewhere along the lines of 60 to 70 games, maybe by the beginning of August.
But the NBA has the luxury of all being self-quarantined in Orlando. You have your basketball courts there. You have the facilities. You'll have testing available. You know, baseball is still, we're not quite sure. Are they going to be in Arizona and Florida? Arizona are their home parks here. Are you going to play East Coast versus East Coast? Like, there's a lot that really has to be sorted out here. And then you have the money aspect here. What is front and center, the biggest hurdle before we have baseball?
It's the money, pure and simple.
All
I mean,
right.
this is like one of those old-fashioned players, owners, labor disputes, and I think that's why the downside is so big. Then that if there is no baseball, it's not because there was this enormous concern about the protocols and the health issues. It's strictly about money. On the players' side, I can tell you this: the players now have found a reason to be galvanized like I have not seen in years. This is not about pensions or service time or some esoteric CBA issue, purely about taking a pay cut. They understand it. They can rally around it. And I think that's why that they're dug in. As far as where they play, listen, I think they're a little bit of a benefit here as opposed to the NBA. They're playing the games outside. From what we know about the spread of the virus, it's a little less risky being outdoors. Where they play, it's looking like it's going to be in major league ballparks. The state of Texas is saying you can have 50% capacity. Some places are saying, forget it, you're not going to count on anybody being in the ballpark. So it's a local issue in terms of who's going to be there, but they are planning to play mostly empty ballparks, major league stadiums.
What will baseball look like when it comes back?
Listen, I'm like a lot of people. I think I'll take it any way I can get it. But when you think about the fact that they're putting in 30-man rosters with 15-man pitching staffs after a 3-week spring training, I don't want to say glorified spring training, but the games will be heavy in pitching changes and less offense, which are two things we don't want as fans, right? I mean, we'll have to take what we can get. But when baseball came back in 81, remember that was the 2-month strike. They started in August. Rosters remained at 25. So baseball pretty much looked the same. Offense went slightly up in the month of August of 81. But if you're giving managers 15-man pitching staffs and starting pitchers are not stretched out to pitch even their usual 5 or 6 innings, you're looking at more pitching changes, less offense.
Does Jacob deGrom win the Cy Young with a 5-3 record?
I guess it depends on his ERA, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Listen, we're not going to get a quote-unquote legitimate season. We're not going to get a quote-unquote legitimate champion. But if I could again go back to 81, you had 4 teams earn a playoff spot. Remember, that was a split season year. 4 teams got into the playoffs by playing only 53 games. There was a world champion there. You had a playoff system. All right, it wasn't the usual 162 and everything we're traditionally used to, but it still worked. I mean, I'll take it. And again, is there an asterisk? Maybe at least mentally there is, but somebody's going to win the Cy Young. Somebody's going to be the MVP.
Baseball had such a golden opportunity here. Like, you could have monopolized summer. And I know that there's health issues, but really, health is not first and foremost here. I know Blake Snell said this. It's always about money. It's going to be about money. If I gave baseball a do-over through this, Tom, 2 months ago, I give the commissioner and Tony Clark, the head of the Players Association, a do-over. What would you do over?
Well, I think you start the negotiations from a closer vantage point because remember, owners first came in and floated the idea of a revenue sharing plan, right? A 50-50 split. Well, that's essentially a salary cap. And anybody who's been around baseball for 5 minutes, never mind the last 50 years, knows that that's a non-starter. That was not a good place to start. Then they came back with this sliding pay cut thing where Mike Trout, Garrett Cole, biggest stars in the game, would take the biggest pay cuts. Well, that's not going to do it with the players because the union is a top-down driven organization. The players are the ones, the stars of the game, who set the salary standards. They have the loudest voice, even if it's a minority of the rank and file. So that kind of ticked off the stars and their agents, especially the game. So that kind of got things off in a wrong spot there, Dan. And I think we've lost time because of that. But you're absolutely right. There was an opportunity here. I looked at 4th of July weekend.
Yeah.
Cubs are playing the Cardinals. Yankees are playing the Red Sox. Dodgers are playing the Giants. We're starting to move about outdoors. Baseball's got the advantage of being sort of episodic, right? It's with us every day, unlike the other sports are more event-oriented. And being part of that, quote, normalizing of routines in America, baseball would be a big part of that. Still got a chance to do that, but it had the platform to itself by being the first ones back. Now we don't know.
I know we're optimistic. We want to be optimistic, but how close are we to the worst case scenario here, Tom, that there is no baseball this summer?
I don't know what the percentage is, Dan, but it's a possibility. And again, I think that should scare the pants off the players and the owners because you're talking about a sport, the last 7 years, attendance has declined every year. You cannot go 17 months without playing a Major League Baseball game in this day and age where baseball is at. Now, the last shutdown was 94, 95, right? That's a long time ago. That's a generation ago, Dan. And since then, we have MMA. The NFL is bigger. The NBA is bigger. There's so many more entertainment opportunities for people out there. People will be out of the habit of baseball. And don't underestimate the power of habit.
Yeah.
So I do think it's a possibility. But again, I'm going to still be on the side of saying there's going to be a season of some length, I think somewhere around 70. And I say that because there's actually some agreement here. The players say, we want to be paid on a prorated basis. The owners came back and said, okay, we'll do that, but we'll only play 50 games. So now actually philosophically, there is some agreement. To me, it's a matter of finding what that number is here that's palatable to the owners and the players. I'd like to think it's 70. I know it's not that simple of just doing math, but at least philosophically, they can get to some schedule where players are paid on a prorated basis.
Which team or teams would benefit from a shortened season?
This may surprise you. Tampa Bay Rays. I look at that team, and I don't think there's any pitching staff in baseball, Dan, that has better stuff from 1 through 15 than the Rays. And again, I think with an expanded pitching staff and pitchers going 5 innings, depth of quality arms is going to win the day. And I defy even the Dodgers. I don't think can match up 1 through 15 of what the Rays can throw out there. So I think in a 50 to 70 game season, the Tampa Bay Rays are the most dangerous team.
This is all going to be about pitching.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think so. And I think a lot of it, Dan, too, is how do you get these guys ramped up in time to really hit the ground running once games start? You know, when I talked to Scott Boras about this, because he's got Garrett Cole, he's got Steven Strasburg, he's got Max Scherzer. He actually brought up the idea of just because spring training 2.0 is 3 weeks, why would you put those elite pitchers at $30 million per year on that kind of compressed schedule? Keep them on their regular 4 or 5 week spring training. Maybe they miss a start or two in the quote unquote regular season, but protecting those elite arms may be something that teams have to look at. So listen, these guys have kept their arms moving, but this has been like, in a purgatory state for 3 months for these pitchers. They haven't been really ramping up. They haven't been throwing off a mound. They've been playing catch. It's like January that never ends, preparing for a season. So they'll come back in varying degrees of shape in terms of arm health. And that's something every club is going to have to really, really pay attention to very closely.
I can't imagine what your day is like. No matter where you go, you probably get the same question. Hey, when's baseball coming back? Like as if you're the gatekeeper here and you decide when baseball is coming back.
Yeah, but listen, I understand it. I kind of asked myself that question too, because there's a lot of frustration, Dan, here because people want baseball. Listen, we all want all sports, right? We want as much normalcy as we can. But I think people have figured out here that the reason there is no plan for baseball right now is simply money. And maybe that's unfair to boil it down that way, but baseball, I think, has to be aware that if there is no baseball, as I said, people are not just out of the habit of baseball, they will resent baseball,
Yeah.
Dan, because it will be because we didn't have games. It was only because they couldn't agree about money.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And we'll end it there. Tom, great to talk to you again. Get baseball back, okay? Come on.
When will we have it back?
I don't know.
I'll do my
Thank you,
best.
Tom. Tom Verducci, Sports Illustrated senior baseball writer and MLB Network analyst.